Don Bluth has made some amazing and iconic movies. Though they were marketed towards children, there were a lot of dark themes. One of the most common was seeing the heroes fight for survival, which leads us to our topic for today: who had the most gruesome end in Bluth's movies? Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and this is Don Bluth Deaths, gruesome to most gruesome. Starting off this list, we have the characters that had sudden and or painless deaths. Our gold medal of least gruesome goes to the lovable mutt, Charlie, for his return to heaven. After losing his life the first time, Charlie had spent a majority of all dogs go to heaven protecting the clock that held his time on Earth. However, when Anne-Marie was at risk of drowning, Charlie made the choice to save her rather than himself. Though it was heartbreaking to watch Charlie say goodbye to Anne-Marie, he was content with passing over.
You know, goodbyes aren't forever.
Following is our silver medal for most gruesome, with Itchy. After his passing in the second film, Itchy and Charlie were given a chance to return to Earth. While Charlie was happy to return and be with Sasha and David, Itchy had other plans. He decides to part ways with Charlie, returning to heaven alone and awaiting Charlie's death again. Like with Charlie in the end of the first All Dogs Go to Heaven movie, it's an emotional yet pleasant exchange of goodbyes. Taking the bronze medal is Sam Tucker. Since this was an off-screen death, we had to place this as one of the least gruesome.
If this message has been activated, then I have died before finding you.
All we know for sure is that Sam was eventually hunted down by the Dredge, and that this death was confirmed. Once again from Titan AE is Preed. Preed was happy to betray the Titan if it meant an easy buck or two.
Backstabbing. Well, I learned from the best.
After siding with the Dredge, he helps hunt down Kale and the others to keep them from interfering with the Dredge's plans. While he's distracted by Kale, Preed is grabbed from behind and his neck is snapped. While it's brutal, it was also relatively quick. Alright, so Titan AE was pretty dark because we have another character, and it's Cook. After he offers information on where he saw Kale and Corso heading, Cook is shot by the Dredge. It would have been a scary encounter, but it was an easy death. Finally, we have the people of Earth that had been unable to escape the Dredge attack. While many were able to be sent into space and away from the carnage, there were millions of others who weren't so lucky. We had to place this tragedy as one of the least gruesome due to how quickly the attack occurred and how many people were likely unaware as to what was taking place. Alright, in this section we'll be covering those that met their end through impacts and crushing. We wanted to mention a very small character for this next spot, the spider that attempted to kill Mrs. Brisby. This scene was responsible for causing a lot of kids to become terrified of spiders. Seeing that thing drooling as it silently stalked Mrs. Brisby to the dark was chilling and put viewers on the edge of their seat. However, as soon as it looked like it was going for the kill, the spider is crushed by the great owl's talons. We've already mentioned Charlie's return to heaven, but how did he get there in the first place? Charlie had escaped death row only to be betrayed by his former partner, Carface. After getting Charlie drunk, Carface and his lackey Killer push an old car to hit Charlie. Since the scene was edited to not show Charlie actually being hit, it's hard to say if he died before or after he hit the water. With the footage we currently have, we have to make the call that he died on impact before the car kept going off the dock. Next is Nicodemus. As the rats are assisting in moving Mrs. Brisby's home, Jenner moves to kill the older rat. Once the home was hovering above Nicodemus, Jenner cut the ropes, sending everything crashing down with Nicodemus caught below. Though Justin led a party to quickly rush and try and save their fallen leader, we see for ourselves that it was too late. The wise old rat was already dead. Next is the main antagonist from The Pebble and the Penguin, Drake. After having his plans foiled, Drake lashes out by picking up a large boulder and launching it at Hubie. In his anger, however, Drake failed to notice the tower becoming structurally unsound. In his final moments, he looks up and sees the pile of rocks tumbling down. He was unable to escape and we're left to witness him getting crushed as the tower fell into ruins. No matter how strong of a hero or villain you are, having a serious lack of air will ultimately do anyone in. First in this section is Itchy. Itchy's death wasn't one we got to see, but it is confirmed that he choked to death on a drumstick. While we didn't witness Itchy's panic in his final moments, it isn't hard to figure out how frightening of an experience it was. Luckily, all we see is Itchy's immediate arrival into heaven, where he's told that he died, and Itchy takes well to the afterlife. As scary as his actual death was, it looks as though it happened too fast for Itchy to really process what happened. Our next spot goes to Rasputin. When he first declares revenge, Rasputin watched on with delight as the family he believed shamed him was massacred.
I banish
you with a curse.
When he spotted Anastasia and her grandmother fleeing, he tried ambushing them and grabbing the small girl. Unfortunately for Rasputin, ice can only hold so many people, and he sunk into the frigid depths. Finally, we have the Sharptooth from the Land Before Time. Though the massive predator was presumed dead after facing Littlefoot's mom, this beast survived until the end of the film. When our heroes had finally had enough of running, they concocted a plan to send the Sharptooth to a watery grave. Though we now have evidence that T-Rex were good swimmers, that huge boulder crushing them and falling from that height would have definitely thrown anyone off. While these are technically children's films, there have been a couple of times we've seen someone die after a brawl. While the Dredge killed a lot of the Titan members, that doesn't mean they didn't have casualties on their side. During the final scenes, Dredge are shot from the sky and killed in the heat of battle. As we don't really form a relationship with the Dredge like we do with the main cast, we aren't able to rank the deaths as more gruesome. Yes, battlefields are bloody, even in a sci-fi setting, but the deaths of the Dredge soldiers are treated like shooting down mindless zombies. They don't give any indicator of pain or suffering once they're shot. Though the Sharptooth survived to the end of the movie, the same can't be said for Littlefoot's mother. This scene not only took its place as one of the most tragic deaths in animated history, but also one of the most graphic fights in children's film. During this fight, a huge chunk of Littlefoot's mother is torn from her back. Considering the T-Rex had leaped onto her and gotten a few good blows in, we can only imagine the internal damage she took. Not to mention the fact that she wasn't given any time to rest and had to attempt to flee the Divide of the Earthquake with her son. Once the dust settled, we see Littlefoot seeking out his mother. This would imply that her injuries were so severe that she collapsed while Littlefoot kept running, leaving him to have to turn back to find her. Just like with Charlie, we had to have two mentions for Rasputin. Rasputin had attempted to turn the tables when finally facing Anastasia again, setting things up to send her into the waters. However, he was so busy gloating and keeping Dmitri from diving in after her, Rasputin failed to notice the lost princess hadn't fallen. Instead, Anya was able to get a hold of the relic that held Rasputin's power. When it was destroyed, Rasputin didn't get a peaceful end.
Das Vidanya.
Instead, his very being was ripped apart until nothing remained. Our next spot goes to Sullivan. After Mrs. Brisby tries to warn everyone about Nem coming to the farm, Jenner attacks her. Sullivan gained Justin's attention to try and protect Mrs. Brisby from their former friend, before retrieving Justin's sword for him. Getting too close to the maddened Jenner, Sullivan is slashed and violently thrown across the mud. After Jenner attempted to kill Justin, Sullivan used the last of his strength to stop his former boss. He then slumped into the mud with his final breath. Our last spot in this section goes to Jenner. Jenner was eager to hold his power over the rest of the rats after his successful murder of Nicodemus. When Mrs. Brisby threatened all that he gained, Jenner drew his sword and attacked. The conflict drew the attention of Justin, who came to Mrs. Brisby's aid. Though Justin fatally wounded Jenner, he ultimately let the traitorous rat live. It wound up being a bad call, as Jenner used the opportunity to try and kill Justin while his guard was down. Thankfully, Jenner's former accomplice Sullivan delivered the final blow. Jenner's downfall was a dagger impaled deep into his back. It was a fitting end, considering his own betrayal to Nicodemus and the other rats of Nem. With so many animal characters, it was inevitable that we would have a section for our hunted and/or eaten characters. Our first ranking in this section goes to Mrs. Brisby's husband, Jonathan. This scene isn't shown in the movie, but Jonathan's death was confirmed by the Great Owl. Jonathan had apparently tried to drug the farm cat Dragon and was caught, leading him to being eaten. As we've seen Dragon on the hunt in this movie, we have to write Jonathan's death as a terrifying one. We don't get much personality development with Dragon, but it would be safe to assume that, like most cats, he would have toyed around with his prey. Picturing a wounded Jonathan batted back and forth just for trying to protect his loved ones is a gut-wrenching image. Taking the next spot is Carface. We had almost considered placing him on our brawl section, as he did get into a fight with Charlie, but ultimately, what killed him was King Gator. Once Carface fell into the water, he was an easy meal for one of the world's most vicious predators. We don't actually see Carface being devoured, but the implication was clear, especially since the next film opens with both Carface and Charlie in heaven together. Next is the people and the mice in the beginning of American Tail. In the first few minutes of this film, we see a distinct comparison between the people and the mice of the region. As soon as Fievel's father began talking about how there weren't any cats running around in America, they arrived. As the mice are seen fleeing from the terrible felines, people are shown shot dead. Homes are set ablaze, and for several minutes, all we hear is screaming and growling. The cats are hunting down the rodents as if it was a sporting event, sporting wicked grins on their faces as they corner their prey. Next is the Romanov family. While we don't see every member of the family hunted down, we do see the brute force behind the mob as they storm the palace. We see the people with ropes and guns charging through the halls and sending the royal family running. Luckily, Anastasia and her mother had been able to escape, but we can only imagine the terror the others had faced. Even Dmitri, who wasn't a target of the mob, was beaten down with the butt of a gun for not giving away where the royals fled. Finally, we had the deaths of those that died through some form of torture. We already covered Carface's first death, but we have another to mention. After he returned to Earth and began working for Red, Carface wound up sealing his fate. As boring as he and Charlie claimed heaven to be, a little excitement was not worth being drugged to hell. When Red is defeated by Charlie using Gabriel's horn, Carface gets cocky. He makes the mistake of getting too close to where Red was sucked into hell and winds up being grabbed by a minion. Though Carface tries scrambling away, he's pulled below and never seen again. Our bronze medal of most gruesome goes to the Dredge Queen, who was destroyed and absorbed by Titan. On the cusp of victory, the Queen was caught in the crossfire as her energy is used against her own people. Like with Rasputin, she's torn apart until nothing is left. The silver medal goes to Joseph Corso. Corso was an interesting character to say the least, and his death was bittersweet. After betraying his friends earlier in the film, Corso becomes remorseful of his actions and decides to sacrifice himself. Already wounded from an attack, Corso uses himself as a conductor, allowing the Dredge to be defeated. And the gold medal of most gruesome goes to the lab rats in The Secret of NIMH. When the Great Owl reveals Jonathan's past to Mrs. Brisby, we see a grim portrayal of the life of a lab rat. They're injected with various substances and left to suffer through whatever side effects would occur. What made it more brutal was knowing the rats were gaining intelligence and becoming more aware of their circumstances with each passing day. Alright guys, that's the death list. But let us know in the comments section if you agree with our ranking, and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge our most gruesome playlist, where we break down the most gruesome moments in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.